Hello everyone, and welcome to the opening press conference of COP30 here in Belém. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to the newly elected COP President André Correa do Lago and the Executive Secretary Simon Steele. We will hear short statements and then we will have time for your questions. I would ask the COP President to start with his remarks. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for all of you to be here. I'm really glad with this first morning. We had a wonderful opening with the beautiful singing by indigenous people that was really very touching. And we had also two icons of Brazilian culture, which are Fafá de Belém and Margareth Menezes. And I think it's quite Brazilian that one of the singers, Margareth Menezes, is the Minister of Culture of Brazil. And I think that I was very touched by the words of my dear friend, who gave me an amazing gavel I'm going to use. He was, I think, not only incredibly patient, kind and elegant president of the COP, and I will try to follow his very good advices that he gave me to preside this COP. And naturally, I think that although there was a wonderful speech by Simon, I obviously think that President Lula's speech was quite amazing, and it's great to have the head of state so committed with this COP, and I believe this was a really wonderful opening session. Then I have to thank here in front of all of you all the delegations for the fantastic agreement that they reached regarding the agenda yesterday night, late at night. And this agreement is, I believe, going not only to allow us to start working today already very intensively, but it will also allow us to explain to the world why these additional issues that had been raised really matter. So, with this...
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And now I hand over to Simon Steele, Executive Secretary.
Thank you, Alex, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to COP30. Every year I'm asked how I feel about the COP. And the answer is that I am determined. Andre and I and all our teams are determined to have a COP that takes another major step forward. And I'm encouraged that after a long night and the hard work of all of those involved, especially the presidency, we have an agenda. And today I spoke about solutions and the need for speed. So this is a very good start. The good news is we're not starting from nothing. The Paris Agreement is delivering real progress. We're now bending the curve of planet heating emissions downwards for the very first time. And I'd refer you to the letter we sent to the parties this morning, which has the latest numbers, updating our recent NDC synthesis report. The new NDCs, including many received in recent days, will reduce emissions by 12% in 2035. That's a big deal. Every fraction of a degree of heating avoided will save millions of lives and billions of dollars in climate damage. And these cuts will get deeper and deeper as we move faster and faster. And make no mistake, humanity is still in this fight. We have some tough opponents, no doubt, but we also have some heavyweights on our side. One is the brute power of market forces. As renewables get cheaper, they're now cheaper than 90% of all renewables. That's why renewables have overtaken fossil fuels in investment and overtook coal this year as the world's top energy source. Policies once unthinkable are now rippling through markets, and change is becoming unstoppable. Extraordinary progress that was unimaginable a decade ago. And we're already seeing huge economies signaling their intent to go further, because climate action is the greatest economic opportunity of this century. Clean energy is the trend of our time, President Xi of China said in New York. More and more countries see that renewables are a jobs jackpot. Yes, while our progress is real, it's not nearly enough. Global heating is already dealing some devastating blows in every country. Just look at the super typhoons blasting the Philippines and Vietnam, the brutality of Hurricane Melissa, crushing lives and businesses. The costs of delay are skyrocketing for every nation. And that's why we're here. We must accelerate in the Amazon. This is my 4th COP as Executive Secretary. Every one, and many before, has delivered real outcomes. Countries have overcome their differences and moved the world forward. We must do so again. We must know what works, policies that move markets, finance that drives delivery, delivery that saves and improves lives. And we must remember that this COP process is ultimately all about people. People who may not follow every negotiation, but who feel the consequences in their anxiety about intensifying disasters, in food prices, insurance costs, and energy bills that rise with every drought, flood, storm, and heat wave. They know a shallow promise when they hear one, and they know that cheaper renewable energy, cleaner air, and greater security are prizes worth fighting for. We'll only win the fight against the climate crisis if all people in all nations can get a fair piece of the epic benefits. And that's what this COP is all about. There's hard work ahead, the stakes are high, but I'll be working side by side with the COP president to deliver the best outcome possible. We need to get straight to the hardest issues quickly, no delay. None of us can afford it. We've built the engine. Paris is working to take us forward. Now it's time to hit the accelerator for people, prosperity, and the planet. I thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I just would also like to welcome Anna Toni, who just joined us on the podium. Would you like to say a few words? Or?
Let us get to the questions.
Then we have time now for your questions. If you could please identify yourself. We have microphones on the side, so wait until you have the microphones because we also have a live stream webcast. So I start in the first row, the lady in the white shirt.
Thank you. It's Victoria Seabrook from Sky News in the UK. I have a question for the ambassador. You have talked about...
Working. No, it was working.
Apologies, we can't hear you properly here. Just a moment.
Try again.
Okay, maybe we try again, and if I could ask you to speak a bit louder, sorry for the inconvenience.
I have two questions, if I may. Firstly, for the ambassador, you've talked about the global north losing enthusiasm for the energy transition. Is that fair? Haven't all countries, north and south, been preoccupied?
You can't hear.
I can't hear. That's my answer.
Okay. Can we ask, please, the audio technicians to fix this problem?
Perhaps if they wanted to come and use this mic.
Sorry?
If they want to come and use this mic is working.
Yeah, okay, that's the other option, but it's a bit tricky.
No, I don't think it is.
Let's just give it 30 seconds, if not, we use this one here. If you could come up on the stage, please. Why don't we use... Why don't you use the lectern?
Can you hear me? There we go. I have two questions, if I may. Firstly, for the ambassador, you've said that the North is losing enthusiasm for the transition, and the South, the global South, is pushing ahead. But is that really fair? Haven't all countries, North and South, been preoccupied? We've had now the UK and EU NDCs. And for both of you, how would you describe China's role on the global stage and here? Thank you.
The global south.
Yeah, I think I was referring to the fact that developed countries are already countries that have a balanced level of development, of social development, and economic development. And so they look at the transition in a different way than a country from the South. A country from the South is building everything at the same time. The rich world started with education in the 19th century, then health, then housing, then workers' rights, then one thing after the other. The developing countries have all these agendas at the same time. And on top of it, have the agenda of climate change. So it is logical that in developing countries, some sectors go faster than others. There's not that uniformity, that development, that the strong basis of development exists in developed countries. So I think that the absence of the US, some reluctance and complexity in the way that some other developed countries are dealing with climate have opened some space for the world to see what developing countries are doing. They may not be doing something totally uniform, but they are doing some amazing things at the same time that they still have some problems. So I'll take the example of Brazil, it's easier for me. So we have still a level of poverty that we were fighting. But at the same time, we have, for instance, Embrapa, that is the most advanced center for development of tropical agriculture in the world. So one thing lives with the other thing. And I think that lately the world has seen how many progresses there are in different sectors depending on the developing countries. So I think it's very important that we expose these successes of developing countries. So you don't need to to only do what you need to do if you can do it uniformly. You can do it sector by sector. And I think that it will be a wonderful exercise for the world to understand how some countries that maybe you wouldn't expect have achieved extremely quickly some fantastic progress. Uruguay, in a few years, became now 99% renewable in its electricity. Kenya is in the same line. So there are many good news from developing countries, but they come in a different way. They come from specific points. And I think this is a very important moment for the world to see that developing countries are doing a lot. And they would do, this is a proof that they would do enormously more if they had financial resources.
Thank you. We're going to try with new devices. So just for the books, the questions came from Victoria Seabrook from Sky News. The gentleman in the first row.
Thank you. Lucas Parolin from Argus Media. It's a question to all of you. You mentioned that the agenda was agreed upon yesterday. What items had to be left out? What items had to be left out? Quais itens ficaram de fora, embaixador?
I think I will ask Tulio to explain that, since he was chairing the meeting yesterday in which the agenda was agreed.
Thank you very much. So we had 8 agenda item proposals, and 4 of them were forwarded to, they were not included in the agenda, but with the understanding that they are going to be considered in presidency consultations that we are going to start immediately. At the same time that we also will have on Wednesday a presidency stock-taking plenary open to observers to see how they go. And these 4 agenda items are on 9.1, on unilateral trade measures, on BTRs, and on NDCs. On special needs and circumstances of Africa, another item, we are also going to have presidency consultations, another presidency consultations on a new agenda item proposal on mountains, and we had the flexibility from the PNG on the agenda item around implementing the GST, and the agenda item on health and climate was forwarded to be considered under existing agenda items on adaptation.
The lady in the second row, in the middle.
Hi, I'm Alice Martins. I'm from Amazonia Vox, here from Belém. So we're talking a lot about funding and finances. I want to ask you, Mr. Steele, specifically, how does the financial resource the U.S. used to put to UNFCCC and does not put anymore, how does this change the impact of the agenda and the actions that UNFCCC does?
Thank you for the question. If you're referring to specifically the Secretariat funding, the budget, one of the items that is being presented for approval at this COP is the approval of our 2026-2027 budget. The hole that was left by the US, it contributed around 20% of our overall budget, has been filled through philanthropy. So that hole has been filled, but it's the majority, the focus of our funding should be through parties rather than through supplementary funding. But we're finding as the demands for new mandates increase, the need for us to focus our fundraising efforts on the supplementary side continues to increase.
The gentleman here in the first row. Microphone is coming from this side.
Seth Borenstein, the Associated Press. For Ambassador Dulago, you in your speech and Simon Steele in his speech, President Lula, Secretary Generals have all said the ambition we've seen, the NDCs are not enough. So can you explain why there is reluctance to put on the agenda the small island nations asking for increased ambitions? Since you keep saying it's not enough, what's the issue with addressing it on the agenda?
Look, this is a party-driven process, and we need to have consensus to put things in the agenda. There are some countries that are concerned that this kind of exercise may create a kind of deviation from the subjects that they believe should be dealt first. So I think you know many of the countries that are reluctant, and I am sure you're going to interview them in the corridors and get wonderful statements by them.
The lady here in the first row with the green shirt.
Thank you, Daniela Chiaretti from Valor Econômico, Brazil. This is implementation COP, so on the GST, there is this transitioning away from fossil fuels, and President Lula is mentioning this, that he's asking for a roadmap for that. Do you see, for both of you, Mr. Steele also, do you see this landing somehow at the COP?
We believe that the decisions of all COPs becomes somehow mandates, need to be developed, need to be perfected somehow. That's why it's a constant exercise. This issue is very clearly stated in Brazil's NDC. So President Lula was repeating what we have included in our NDC. So this is something that we are going to see how this discussion evolves, but there is a considerable number of countries that want to discuss that. But once again, this is a party-driven negotiation. The ideas have to come from the countries, and we were very happy yesterday in discussing the agenda, because it was the parties that would come with suggestions on how to deal with the issues. So we are expecting how the parties are going to react to that.
Gentleman, second row in the aisle.
Thank you. John Ainger from Bloomberg News. Question for the COP30 president. As part of the deal that was reached to avert an agenda fight, you've agreed to a stock-taking plenary on Wednesday, and that leaves 48 hours to have these presidency consultations that you've just mentioned. How far do you expect to get with that? And if we arrive on Wednesday with not much progress, what are the solutions? What solutions are there that you're looking at? Would there be a cover decision, for example, that could align countries going forward? Thank you.
let's wait for Wednesday. For the moment, everything is open, and we intend to develop a very intense series of consultations, and I hope that on Wednesday we will have an interesting result.
Third row on this side. In the middle, the gentleman with the blue shirt.
Thank you very much. Nick Perry from AFP. If I could ask a question, please, both of Mr. Steele and Mr. Correa-Delgado. You've mentioned already that there are many countries that want to see some kind of response on both fossil fuels and on the sort of lack of ambition around national climate targets. Are you concerned that, if we leave it to the party-driven process, many of these countries will leave unhappy? I mean, how much pressure are you under to try to, marshal a response that satisfies countries that do want to see action on that difficult issue?
No, I think that most of the issues at this COP, there are some inputs that are reaching the presidency. So this is one of them. But I would like also to remind all that when we're talking about transition away, is that we have to do it in the way it is written in the text. So we have to remember that we cannot deviate from the issue of finance that is so dear to so many countries in this process. So sometimes you only think that a country is blocking something or they don't want something. In fact, is that they want something else, and that this new element somehow interferes in their vision of what is the hierarchy of the themes that are being debated. So I think that's what we need to adjust on those 2 days to see if we can get all the elements that are important to parties in this discussion to make sure that we have a really very a solid result regarding this and other issues.
The lady in the Bordeaux shirt, a bit further behind.
Hey, I'm from Global News, Barbara Carvalho. I would like to talk a little bit more about financing, because we know that it's a challenge to increase or to try to increase the financing till 1.3 trillion. And furthermore, how will you ensure that the total amount is actually implemented in real measures? Please.
Yeah, the 1.3 trillion, the roadmap that Minister Babayev and myself presented last week shows some ways that we can reach that, but this refers obviously to 2035, no? So I think that in Mr. Babayev's speech, he stressed very much the importance on working on the 300 that were already approved. And this exercise will have, I think, a strong impact on the evolution of what it will be possible to reach. But I think this is a legacy that we also have to discuss during this COP.
The gentleman.
Hi, Rodrigo Caetano from Brazil Journal.
Can you speak up, please? Can you speak up, please?
Of course. My question is also about financing, and it's said that most of the 1.3 trillion will come from the private sector. And we're seeing since COP in Madrid, we're seeing increase in the presence of private sector in COPs, but this time maybe not so much. How are you seeing the presence of the private sector here?
Thank you. Many delegations see it differently, see that the private sector can have an important contribution, but that public money continues to be absolutely essential. I believe that there is one very interesting number that we have to take into consideration, is that the average capacity of private sector resources that is leveraged by $1 from the multilateral development banks is just $0.6. So for each dollar that they put, they raise only 0.6 from the private sector. This is the average in multilateral development bank. This is something that is in the report of Summers and Singh for the Indian G20, the triple agenda. This number is very worrying. So if first we have to have more public money, naturally, but also we have to raise much more private money. And that's why we are very happy to have the private sector very engaged at this COP, because these numbers have to increase with trust and with the conviction that these are really, these projects and these programs really mean business for the private sector. So the private sector can also help drive some decisions by countries that can attract more resources. As you know, for instance, some countries are adopting country platforms, for instance, to make sure that these countries are more attractive to private money. So I think that the progress that we make in private resources cannot be understood as a substitution of public money, and cannot be interpreted as if we get more private, we don't need public. I think that there are very different circumstances and depending on the country, and so this discussion has to be taken very, very seriously, but I think that the private sector will play an amazing role in mainstreaming climate into the economy, which I think is the final objective for us all, is that if all investments take into consideration climate, we are going to have much more than 1.3 trillion. No? So this is a path, and we have to work together so this path reaches the right objective.
Thank you. So we have time for one final question. The lady in the white shirt in the third row.
Good afternoon. For Mr. Steele and for Ambassador Correa, I would like to ask a question that was made before. This is El País from Spain. How would you describe the role of China in the issue of climate change?
Well, I could speak for a considerable time about that, but in a short version, I think that China embraced this agenda in an extraordinary way because they added the elements that I believe were missing. One of them is scale. The other is technology. And the other is the fact that as a developing country, it needs to bring solutions that are affordable to more people. So I don't need to say how important China has become for EVs, how for solar panels, for wind, for batteries. But I think that there is also a consequence of that that is quite important to stress, is that by lowering, thanks to their scale, by lowering the price of all these essential elements in the transition, they are at the same time doing an amazing job of cooperation, international cooperation, because if the solar panel now has cost 90% less than a few years ago, much more people in the developing world can afford them, and somehow you need less resources to get this done in many countries in the world, thanks to the reduction of the price. And then you can do other things in developing countries. So the contribution is really very significant, because China has very advanced technology and has a scale that can only be compared to India. And India is somehow doing the same, because they have also brilliant companies and engineers and incredible people, and they are going in the same direction. So we are going to have two major markets that will lower the price of this transition, because both countries have embraced this transition in a very clear way.
So thank you very much for today. I would like to give you a few numbers at the end of this press conference. On registration, we have 194 countries plus the European Union, so it's 195 parties have been registered for COP30 here in Belém. 47,459 registered participants in total, of which 5,000 are participating virtually. I will give updates in the course of the week, but I wanted to give you these first numbers. Thank you very much. The COP presidency will do daily press briefings, 1:15, same time, same location. See you tomorrow. Thank you.